And I'm here with contributing writer Jake Fogleman to give you guys a little bit of a news update. This week we have two stories actually that are connected to one another that are also something that we sort of predicted a while back, right? So Jake, can you give us a little bit of detail about what's happened? You start with California.
Right. So, like you said, as soon as Texas came out with that restrictive abortion law, SB 8, you wrote a nice piece saying how this will inevitably, if it's allowed to stand, inevitably will be used against guns. And sure enough, this Saturday, Governor Gavin Newsom of California, one day after the Supreme Court allowed Texas's law to stand while litigation is ongoing in the state, he came out and put out a statement basically saying, if the Supreme Court's going to let this go, I'm going to direct my attorney general to come up with our own version of the law that targets assault weapons and ghost gun kits. Same terms. He said it's going to be a $10,000 damages that private citizens can seek if they sue anyone selling a ghost gun or an assault weapon. So pretty much exactly as we predicted, a blue state politician said, you want to do this with abortion? Well, we'll do it with guns.
Yeah, and FPC, Firearms Policy Coalition, actually predicted this as well in their brief in the Texas abortion case, and that essentially this could be this strategy. Whatever you think about abortion, obviously, or guns, it's pretty obvious that this strategy is going to be used if it works. And so far, it has worked because it's kept these abortion rights groups or Planned Parenthood from being able to enjoin people against using this law to sue them. And so it's not a foolproof thing. It's not a forever thing because once suits start to happen, then there can be more actual adjudication of the issue. Yeah. But certainly, given how this has gone so far, given that the law has been able to take effect and remain in effect to this point, you're probably going to see people replicating it. And I think you're going to see more of this come along. Now, I think the Newsom's comments are a bit odd because, well, one, the timing was weird because he said this, I think it was like the next day, and he said it at like 11 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, it was a Saturday evening, which is strange.
Yeah, it was Saturday. So I guess that's like 8 p.m. his time, but it was very weird timing. And then on top of that, like his threat was odd too, because he was threatening to do things that are already illegal under federal law, or sorry, not federal law, but California law. So they've already outright banned the sale of certain kinds of so-called assault weapons, and they've already banned the manufacture of so-called ghost guns without serialization and registration, and they banned the selling of kits of tools required to make your own firearms at home. So it's weird to say that they're going to use this tactic on the same things they've already just banned through the regular course of traditional legislation. Whereas Tish James in New York, the attorney general there, the one who's suing the NRA, who's is obviously very pro-gun control and has called the NRA a terrorist organization and is trying to dissolve them. She's, her positions on gun policy are fairly straightforward. She had a more interesting comment when she was on The View. She had just dropped out from the governor's race and decided to stay as attorney general, but she's weighed into the same conversation. What did she say?
Yeah, so she was asked about it on the panel, and she essentially said, I saw what he did, and I want to follow his lead. I'm going to direct my other state officials in New York to follow something similar. But what was interesting about her comments, she attached it more to a strategy for getting around the PLCAA, the Protection for Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, which is federal law that essentially shields manufacturers and dealers of firearms from liability if someone who lawfully comes to own a firearm goes on to commit a crime. You can't just sue, Smith & Wesson or Glock or whatever for someone using a crime for a lawful product. But she, I guess,
Right.
thinks it's a strategy to get around that. And so that's why she's interested in pursuing this.
Yeah, that's much more interesting than what Newsom was saying, just because it's more realistic in my mind. Using this strategy to outlaw assault weapons and ghost gun kits doesn't make sense because they've already just done that directly. They aren't trying to, they don't need to enact any sort of special techniques to try and judo their way around pre-trial enforcement.
Right.
Which is the whole point of this strategy.
Well, not only that
idea,
not only that, but
with this stuff, with James, it's, they've been trying to find ways around PLCAA for a while. And so that's where this kind of strategy would make more sense.
Yeah, I agree. Back to Newsom just for a minute. Not only are the products already illegal under state law, but it's not even really analogous to the Texas situation because, whatever you think about abortion, it was constitutionally in Roe was considered a constitutional right, whereas assault weapons and ghost guns haven't yet been adjudicated by the Supreme Court to be a constitutional right. So if it was going to be analogous, he would have to say, if anyone has a handgun in their home, you can sue them for $10,000 or something like that. And the fact that he wasn't willing to go that far tells me his comments were a little bit more of maybe symbolism or kind of like a political statement more than an actual strategy for gun control.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, that's what makes sense. And so using this strategy would be designed to enact something that is otherwise likely to get struck down in court or likely to get enjoined, immediately.
Right.
Something that's going to get a preliminary injunction issued against it to prevent the law enforcement of a state from enforcing the law. The attorney general or the police in the state, the judges can easily enjoin those people from doing anything in regards to the law. It's much harder to enjoin the entire population of the state, right? Because that's what this strategy is set up to do. It says that, other people private citizens can enforce this law, not the actual law enforcement representatives of the state. So that's the unique thing. That's the novel concept here. I think that eventually it'll get worked out in the courts. I don't think the courts are going to allow this sort of workaround to take effect, especially because you're seeing it spread now, not just in these gun control comments, but also with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who announced the exact same sort of strategy, but targeted at critical race theory being taught in schools or even at private companies. So, this is going to snowball into everybody's pet issue. They're going to, whatever's the hot thing, like CRT or gun control or abortion, whatever's like the animating issue for a particular party, that some state somewhere that's controlled by that party is going to try the same tactic until the court does something about it. So it'll be interesting to see where they end up and how far down this road we go of trying to incentivize everyone to sue everyone. Right. As some sort of novel enforcement tactic, but I doubt I doubt it'll shake out that way. And not just because, I think Duke's Jake Charles had an op-ed discussing this, where essentially his argument boiled down to the idea that the court won't allow this on guns because they favor gun rights over abortion rights. I think it's going to be a bit less of a partisan black and white reason that the court wants to get rid of this tactic. I don't think they're going to look kindly on this for even rights that they favor more than other rights, or however you want to put it. I just think that this kind of tactic is something that's the courts are not going to look kindly on trying to evade them, basically, with these novel approaches. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how these things shake out, if they all materialize into actual legislation that actually passes. Because I think that's a big if, but it's not impossible by any means. And Tish James, as far as the gun policy goes, that's the one. Those comments make more sense because, the gun control movement has been trying to get around that liability since the 90s, when it was the whole law was predicated on this tactic of trying to sue gun manufacturers over the criminal use of firearms. So we'll see where it ends up, though.
Yeah,
but hey, well, go ahead. What do you got?
I was just saying, just one to your point about New York trying to get around this. They had that public nuisance law earlier this year where they adjusted their legal terms to allow for more lawsuits against gun manufacturers. And I just read, I think Cam Edwards has a piece in Bearing Arms that the firearms industry is actually suing them for that. So depending on how that litigation goes, it could affect her comments that she made about using this strategy for the PLCAA. If that gets shut down, it'll be hard to see how she can pursue this strategy to get around it as well.
Yeah, but obviously politicians are never quite dissuaded completely from achieving these sorts of goals just because the courts keep striking down their efforts. We've certainly seen that time and again.